Welcome back to the Why Didn't I Know podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jenny Martin, and on this episode, we're talking about, did Mary Magdalene teach sex magic? So what is sex magic? Sex magic is the idea that through the use of sexual energy, arousal, sexual turn-on, and orgasm, that we can take some desire, some intention that we have, visualization of what we would like to see in physical reality that is not yet manifest. And through the charging of this through sexual energy, we can support that actually coming into physical manifestation. And it's specifically focused on the intensity of bringing your visualization into the moment of the peak of orgasm. And many people swear by that this is the way that they manifest their goals and so forth. But what I'm wanting to talk about here is this what Mary Magdalene taught? And as someone who teaches a course on Mary Magdalene's sacred sexuality, as someone who's been a follower of Mary Magdalene for several decades in my life, she's changed my life in radical, positive ways. And I've studied her alchemy as her being the same person as the very first historical alchemist in the first century named Mary the Cop, Mary the Jewess, Mary the Prophetess, and her writings survive through her student in the 3rd century, who his books survive even today, named Zosimos. So she is someone who is very well versed in alchemy. That's not necessarily magic the way that we think of it today. Alchemy was the basis of Christianity, and it actually relates to a lot of the miracles that Jesus performed. Alchemy is based on laws of physics, but not the physics we learn in school. It's the physics that intelligence agencies study, so it's more of a secret physics, but it's balance of science and a spiritual philosophy. And it absolutely does have to do with us being co-creators in this world. Alchemy is so powerful that it gives us the potential of bringing our dreams into manifestation. However, there is a difference between what we see today in terms of what sex magic has become, and Aleister Crowley is one of the people that gets cited on this a lot, and he is quite the opposite of Mary Magdalene in every regard. He did not look to the divine creator. He looked to something quite the opposite. I mean, the guy called himself the Beast and 666. So you can see his allegiances are somewhat different. So what's the difference between the sex magic, which is focused on using sexual energy to bring forth a desired result that you have clearly in your mind and that you focus on during the moments of orgasm, and then the sexual alchemy as taught by Mary Magdalene, which is elevating your consciousness during sex. So allowing yourself through practice, through sacred ritual, to get to a state where your personal individual identity temporarily falls away during the moment of orgasm. So you're not wishing for a particular thing. It's not the ego wanting to intend a certain outcome. During the sexual alchemy that Mary Magdalene is teaching, you actually disappear, you fall away, and not in your entire existence. That would be terrible. Your ego is absolutely necessary. It's not about killing the ego. We need an individual identity. We are given an individual identity to be a unique expression of the divine here on earth. So it's not about doing away with the ego, but during the moments of the heightened state of ecstasy, of pleasure, when your body is just completely overcome with this state of intense bliss, and then you might orgasm at that particular point, that climax, it's then that you are releasing control over your individual wants, your individual desires, your ego. Your ego takes a back seat. And it's then that you can get into this state. You might call it a psychedelic state because there is this DMT inside of us that can be released. So you're getting into this state of unitive consciousness, this state of tapping into unconditional love. And at that point, you could care less about your next job, your next car, and frankly, even who's in your life. Because at that point, you have reached a state where you are one with all of creation. There's no need anymore. There's no want, there's no lack, there's no sense that if I just lived in this other location, then I could be happy. That is all gone in that moment of bliss. When you actually reach that state where your personal identity drops away and you merge with the divine, all individual desires are gone. You realize, you don't necessarily realize in the moment, later on reflecting, you would realize that all those things that we want as human beings, there's nothing wrong with them. You can have them. Absolutely. You deserve them. Sure. You deserve to have a better house. You deserve to live in the place that you want, the location you want to live in. You absolutely can manifest the person that you want, not necessarily that individual, that's their free will. You can manifest a wonderful relationship. But the difference in Mary Magdalene's sexual teaching is that you are not going for those concrete actions in a sex magic way. You are using sex, and I don't like to say the word using sex because it's really not using sex. Sex becomes a prayer and not some pious, holy, restrained activity, but a wild, free, liberated activity. But it becomes a prayer based on the fact, I use the word prayer based on this fact, that you are recognizing the divinity of the moment. You're recognizing your connection with the intelligence that created you, with the intelligence that brought together the few cells that initially formed who you are today, initially formed your consciousness in utero, and has brought you to where you are today. Even if you disregard that there is a higher power, it is still present and available to you the moment you decide to acknowledge it and bring it into your life. And so all of the different things that we can want as humans, we can certainly have them. But at the end of the day, what our soul really wants is that connection with that sustaining presence that can never leave you. Humans can exit our lives. Even blood relatives can exit our lives, not through death, but just through disagreement, not seeing eye to eye. During the pandemic, a lot of people lost trusted friends, even family members, out of their life, not through death, but through them having a disagreement about what was going on in the world. And you lost that. People that you thought were going to be in your life for a very long time are still alive. Theoretically, you could be in contact with them, but they're almost like dead in a way because there's no contact. And that can happen in human relationships where there's that falling away. But when we have a relationship with the divine, and this is what Mary Magdalene was teaching, when we have that relationship with the divine, when we seek that relationship first, and we access that unitive state of consciousness that we can uniquely access through the sex act, then what happens is the difficulties we have in our life, they don't take us down in the same way that they could. If your full sense of assurance and feeling safe and feeling connected came from another human, and they decided they didn't want to talk to you anymore, or they actually passed away, then that can put you on very shaky ground in terms of your own psyche, in terms of your own well-being. But if you connected to the divine as your steady lifeline, the ups and downs of people, the way they're acting towards you, whether they're coming or going, it doesn't shake you to the core quite in the same way. Of course, you're going to grieve if someone leaves your life and you were very close to them, whether they leave through death or some other reason. Of course, it's going to be hard. But when you have this sense of being able to come back to your center, come back to what you know to be true, then there is a steadiness within you that no matter what chaos is going on around you, you can't be shaken. That would be the number one reason why Mary Magdalene was teaching the idea that we're not using sex to get a thing, the sex magic idea. We're not using sex to manifest a particular goal. Our only seeking is to merge with the all, And in that merging with the all, everything that we need and want is there for us. Some days when we merge, maybe we just need our soul to be reassured that some crisis we're going through, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through the other side because we're going to be steadied through the process. Now, that connection with the divine is not going to take away all your problems. It's part of human existence that life throws lots of stuff at us. But what we can have is that steadiness to walk through it with a different kind of sense of spiritual authority, a different kind of sense of peace, and not to be a bundle of nerves and a bundle of anxiety the whole time. It's not that it's wrong to feel those things. It's just that our human body thrives much better when we're not in that state of fight or flight, that state of panic based on whatever's going on with us. Our physical body really responds to having more of a sense of calmness. And yes, there's a lot of somatic things that you can do to aid that. And I think there's lots of great information out there about that. But that needs to be paired with something deeper. And that deeper sense is, what are you drawing from? Are you always having to do a somatic exercise to work yourself into a different state? Or can you draw from Source itself? Can you draw from Source itself and bring yourself back to that knowing that no matter what chaos is going on in your life, there's a steadiness underneath the rushing water, the rushing waves. There's a calmness. If you get down deep enough in the ocean, even if it could be very turbulent on top, it's completely still if you go deep enough. And that's the depth we can get to. And especially in the times that we're living in now, when things are so messy, so chaotic, so much violence, so much going on, it's so important for us to come back to our connection. So that's what we're talking about with Mary Magdalene and the concept of using sexual energy, not in a sex magic way, but in an alchemical way where we are actually transforming ourselves. This is what the whole idea of alchemy was. You're bringing forth your invisible, incorporeal, as she called it, nature, and you're creating a sense of yourself as not just a material being. As a material being, there's always a sense of wanting and longing and wishing you could have something else. And there's nothing wrong with any of that, but there is a sense of something much more solid and much more soul satisfying that we can get to through her teaching in alchemy. And the soul satisfying part of this is the idea of the seek ye first, this spiritual consciousness. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all else will be added to you. I'm not a fan of the language kingdom of God. If you're not a fan of that, I can completely relate. I'm not into the turning of the patriarchal religion on these things. That's not the way Jesus spoke, and that's a completely different podcast episode I'll do on that. If you translate his words from Aramaic, it's very inclusive of masculine and feminine. It's not all masculine. So it's not a male kingdom. It's both. It's not just some patriarchal idea here, but it's the idea that if you seek this unit of consciousness, that being all your soul is after, that whatever is in your highest and best good will come forth in your life. It's not that you can't have dreams and desires and write down your goals. Absolutely. But there's a sense of being somewhat detached from the sense of wanting. This idea of seek ye first is the idea that if you have raised your consciousness, that you can do through entering this unit of consciousness through sex, if you have raised your frequency, if you are connecting with this idea that there is this unconditional love, that you do have this direct relationship with this infinite presence, then you become a magnet for whatever your desires are in an organic way. Rather than ask for a specific thing or intend for a specific thing, you will much more easily be able to have a desire just organically, naturally. And because you're radiating at this higher level, you know that you are plugged into the divine just as part of your life. You will find, quote, coincidences just happen all the time. You're in a sense of synchrony with the divine realm, and you find yourself in a certain divine flow where you're able to manifest effortlessly. It's not about working so hard to make sure the visualization is precise and you're doing it correctly. There's something beyond that, and that's what Mary Magdalene was teaching. If you are in this communion with the divine, you are bringing forth in your life, as a natural consequence of that, opportunities, people, blessings, good things in your life are just showing up because it's part of what you're magnetizing to yourself, because it's just where your frequency is at. When you look at it from the sex magic point of view, you start off with what you want. You use the sexual turn on and energy to cast that vision out into the universe. But how many times have you ever wished for something, it came into your life, and then you had to do all you could to get it out of your life? For instance, you thought you knew you wanted this particular job, and you get it, and then you realize you can't stand it. Or you really had your eyes set on a particular person, being in a relationship with them, and you finally are in a relationship with them and you realize they're nothing like what you thought. That's the problem with us manifesting from our human self. When we manifest from our human self, we can't see the full vision of what would be in our highest and best good. Maybe we are using our sex magic to intend to move to a particular geographical location, but we had no idea that the divine was going to manifest this incredible person for us to be in a relationship in the town that we're already living in. And we work so hard to think, okay, if I just move to this other town, then I'm going to meet them. But you've missed that there was an opportunity right in your own location because you were so focused on what you thought you needed. And that can easily happen where we intend a specific outcome and we think it's exactly what we want, or we think it's going to be as great as we hope it will be, and it's not. And this is why living life in communion with something that is far more intelligent than any of us and has a vision for our lives beyond what we can see in our limited way in the here and now. It knows what would bring our heart joy in the long term, and also has the ability, when we tap into this higher intelligence, it has the ability to think even higher than we could think. Maybe our greatest dream is doing a particular thing or expressing our talents in a particular way. But the divine knows that we have far more in us that we're not even allowing ourselves to see. And when we start tapping into the divine through this non-attached, goal-oriented type of sexual sacred connection, when it's not attached to a specific outcome and it's only attached to merging with the divine, and we start to see ourselves differently. And that's really the gift. When we start to see ourselves as an embodiment of the divine and really loved so deeply, loved in a way that can never be taken from us, it steadies us. It gives us a different vision of ourselves. And then we're able to dream bigger dreams. We're able to see our own potential in a bigger way. But if we kept it just in the sex magic way of, okay, this is what I think I can get, or this is what I think I can do, that's really just coming from your own human ego. And many of us have had negative programming in our lives, whether it's from the culture, whether it's from our families or from the education system, that has kept us smaller than we actually could be living. And so part of this is getting a bigger vision for our lives. And that doesn't come from our own past memory, our own past history. It comes from tapping into something that is far bigger than ourselves, tapping into a power, a presence that is bigger than us, and getting used to feeling good. That's a big part of it too. How much joy, how much love, how much feeling good in my body, in my cells, in my being, how much of that can I handle? Because getting used to those feelings, it's not like you have to spiritually bypass when you're sad or spiritually bypass when you're angry. Certainly allowing those emotions to move through you. But when we start to practice sex as a sacred act, whether it's self-pleasure or whether it's with a partner, either way, and when our intention is to allow ourselves to let go and to allow ourselves to invite the presence of the divine, certainly within us, the divine within us, but also the divine that creates the stars, that creates the heavens. This is a vast universe that is baffling to scientists about how it originated. And getting into that connection with something that is beyond you, with something that is keeping this world together, that is beating your heart right now, that is breathing breath through your body. All of those functions of your autonomic nervous system that we just take for granted, that we can learn in a biology textbook, there was some intelligence that put all of that in motion, and that is keeping all of that in motion. And that if you ever hear people give their testimony of having died and come back in near-death experiences, they absolutely know there is something keeping us together, that we are watched over, we are sustained by something that gives us life. And the existential angst, the sense of loneliness, the sense of disconnection that we can feel living on earth is that sense that it's denied in the world today. If you're intelligent, then you don't believe in God. If you're intelligent, then you don't believe in any of that stuff. And you can call it the goddess. You know what? It doesn't care what you call it. The Gospel of Philip, in there, it says, language is human made. Language is a tool that we use to navigate our world, but it can never define something as indescribable as God. And so, in other words, if you decide to call it Gaia, if you decide to call it the tree, whatever you want to call it, it's the same thing. It's going to respond, but it's not necessarily just in you. It is in you, but it's beyond you. And it's what we have come here to find again. We knew it when we were pure energy on the other side before we were born. We knew it. And life had a certain flow to it then. We had a joy, a connection. And that's what you get when you're in connection with this presence. You get this transmission of knowing that even with all the messiness going on in your life, all the messiness going on in the world, it's all going to be okay. It's actually not even going to be okay. We're living at a time where there's going to be a huge shift in consciousness. And I'm not the first person to say that. Many, many, many people are talking about that, but we really are. And it's even described in the book of Revelation. It's right in there. It's not necessarily the way some evangelicals think it's going to be, just some people. It's all of us. It's all of us. But we don't have to wait to some specific time in the future. If you're listening to this, you're part of bringing that consciousness into the planet now. And the big cosmic joke is religions have told us that sex is taking us away from that state of unitive consciousness. But sex is the way. Not unconscious sex where you drink a 6-pack of beer and just screw someone. Not that kind of sex. It's the kind of sex where you realize your body is a temple. You realize your pleasure is given to you as a source of connection with not only your partner, but with the divine. The divine is in the midst of the bliss, is in the midst of the love that you share. It's there. And when we're in a sober state of mind, when we're in a loving connection with someone who respects us, honors us, trusts us, knows our heart, knows us, doesn't just see us as someone to have a physical connection with. Nothing wrong with those types of connections. No judgment there. But there's an invitation for us from the divine to be known more deeply by not only our partner, but to know the divine more deeply, to know the Creator more deeply, and for it to know us. There's the idea that the divine gives us the desire for sex so that it can play and have a good time here on earth, that it gets to know itself through us. So in the Urantia book says that the divine is evolving through our own conscious evolvement. We are literally co-creating with the divine. And so to wrap it up here, there is something that is beyond sex magic. Sex magic is a step for many people, for them to realize that their power of visualization works, their power of intention works, that sexual energy is not wrong, that it's very powerful, sexual energy is very powerful. And so it's a step on your evolution. But there's something beyond that. There's something beyond the wanting and trying to manifest and working on your goals and then realizing, okay, that wasn't exactly what you wanted, then you want a different goal. There's something beyond that. There's tapping into this sustaining life force, this loving presence. And that's the thing. Yes, it is everywhere present. It is this idea of pantheism, so to speak, but it's not just an impersonal presence. And that's what we really get in this Christian. And sometimes when I say the word Christian, people cringe, and I get it. I'm not talking about what we see in churches today or what we see with preachers today. I'm talking about something very pure and original to the ones that walked the planet at one point, Yeshua and Magdalene, before it became all wrapped up in politics and the Church of Rome and all of that, and it became completely distorted and patriarchal. The original teachings, which was about us being physical beings, sexual beings, and merging with our Creator through that. This is what we see in the alchemy teachings of Mary Magdalene. So sex is given to us to evolve our souls, and it is meeting with the divine that we can uniquely do when our waking consciousness takes a back seat. When we get to that elevated state and our waking consciousness, our normal everyday identity, what you identify as, this is who I am. I'm good at this. I'm not very good at that. I've got this issue. I've got that issue. This is my family of my heritage. All of those different things that you decide define you. And those are great. It's great to be proud of where you come from or your talents or all of that. Those are great things. But it's not the core of you. You are a spiritual being first. And I know that gets said a lot, but that's our resting place. That's our place to go back to, especially when there's a lot of chaos going on in the world. When we rest back into who we truly are, what we truly are all about, then all of the ups and downs of life don't seem quite as debilitating, because we know that there's another perspective. We know that there's another reality that is even more real than this reality. So I'll leave that with you. Thank you for joining me today. I invite you to rate and review this podcast wherever you have found it. And I look forward to talking with you next time. Take good care.